So, I would like to introduce our topic for today with the short warm-up activity entitled Cryptogram. So, the instruction is easy. You just need to decode the mystery message by finding its substitute letter. So, in this activity, you will be given a code written in number. This is the code written in number. Okay? So, all you need to do is to identify the mystery message by looking to the um this illustration below. So as you can see, there is a corresponding letter for each number. So if we will use this illustration, 11 corresponds with letter C, 5 corresponds with letter E. So we have here 5 corresponds with letter E, and L corresponds with letter 2. So the mystery message that we are looking for is cell. Okay? So I think the instructions are easy to follow. So we could start now. So the first message or mystery message is this. So we have 14, 12, 4, 8, 11, 18, 8, 20, 10, 19, 12, 8, and 20. So, what is the missing word? Correct. So, our mystery word class is mitochondrion. Let's proceed. Now, the second mystery message is 3, 5, 19, 8, 7, 12, and 11. You got it right. So, the answer is aerobic. Next, we have 3, 20, 3, 5, 19, 8, 7, 12, and 11. Very good. The correct answer is anaerobic. Let's proceed. Next mystery message. So we have 11, 3, 4, 3, 7, 8, 2, 12, and 11. So what is our mystery word? Very good. Our mystery message or mystery word is catabolic. And then, let's have this one. I think this would be the last mystery message or mystery word that we have. So we have 11, 5, 2, 2, 24, 2, 3, 19, 19, 5, 1, 6, 12, 19, 3, 4, 12, 8, and 20. So what is the mystery word? All right, you got it correctly. So our mystery word is cellular respiration. Okay? So I hope you enjoyed that short warm-up activity that introduces to us with our lesson for today, which is all about cellular respiration. So in this topic class, we will try to answer this question: how we obtain chemical energy from the food that we eat. These are the lesson objectives that we will discuss for today. So number 1, we will define what is cellular respiration. Next is describe cellular respiration in terms of its overall chemical equation and type of chemical reaction. Third, describe the stages of aerobic cellular respiration. Fourth, introduce anaerobic cellular respiration. And last, we will describe the structure of mitochondrion in which cellular respiration takes place. So now, let's start discussing the concept of cellular respiration. Let's start discussing our lesson for today by defining the process itself, the process of cellular respiration. So class, cellular respiration is a process in which a reactant molecule undergoes an oxidation-driven flow of electrons to coenzyme, then to an electron acceptor, accompanied by the production of energy in form of ATP in a step-by-step process. So this definition class of cellular respiration is the technical definition of cellular respiration. And I highlighted some words here that we need to focus on for us to easily understand its meaning. So the first word that I want to give focus on is the word reactant molecule. So when we are dealing with reactant molecule class, these are the initial molecules or the starting molecules for the cellular respiration. So these are the molecules that will be converted into the products. So take note that in cellular respiration, the reactant molecules could be carbohydrates, it could be lipids, protein, or nucleic acid. However, in the overall general equation of cellular respiration that you will see later on, carbohydrates is the carbohydrate is the reactant molecule that is often considered as the reactant molecule for cellular respiration. Okay? So next, aside from reactant molecule, another keyword that will help us to understand this definition of cellular respiration is the word oxidation. So what is oxidation? So in the previous lesson, I already mentioned redox reaction, which is short for reduction, oxidation, oxidation reaction. So oxidation, class, is a chemical reaction in which a certain molecule loses an electrons by transferring it to another molecule. Because as we will see later on, cellular respiration is technically a process which the electron of our reactant molecule will be shuttled off. Or when we say shuttled off, it will be transferred to one electron carrier to another. Okay? So in the process of transferring electron from one molecule to another, energy is released. So that is oxidation. Now, next, another keyword is flow of electrons. So as I mentioned a while ago, cellular respiration involves the transfer of electron from the original reactant molecule to a series of coenzymes or to a series of electron acceptors. So flow of electrons means that transfer of electron from one molecule to another. Later on, I'll be showing you an illustration in which it will show you the flow of electrons from the reactants to coenzyme and then to the electron acceptor. Next, another keyword is electron acceptor. So, electron acceptor and coenzyme, okay, are molecules that will accept electron from the reactant molecule. So later on, we will identify what are the coenzymes and electron acceptor involved in the process of cellular respiration. And last, I highlighted here step-by-step process because cellular respiration is a process which has stages or different stages. So to tell you, though we will be discussing the different stages of cellular respiration later on, there are 4 main stages of cellular respiration. And these are glycolysis, pyruvate oxidation, we have Krebs cycle, and the last is electron transport chain and chemoosmosis. Now, let's continue. So in this slide, I mentioned a while ago that cellular respiration involves the transfer of electron from the reactant molecules to an electron acceptor and then to a coenzyme. So in this slide, I'll be giving you an illustration which will enable you to understand that concept of flow of electrons. Take note, class, that in cellular respiration, the reactant molecule will be oxidized. So when we say oxidized, it will lose electron. And the electron that the reactant molecule will be losing will be transferred to what we call an coenzyme. Okay? So the reactant molecule will lose one electron, and the electron that the reactant molecule will lose will go to a coenzyme. Okay? So from a coenzyme, so the coenzyme will accept the electron that has been lost by the reactant molecule. Now, the next step is that the coenzyme will transfer again the electron that it accepts from the reactant molecule to another coenzyme. Okay, so it will transfer again its electron to another coenzyme. And then, from the transfer of electron from coenzyme to another coenzyme, the electrons will now be passed through what we called as an electron acceptor. So the electron will be passed into an electron acceptor. So in the process of passing the electrons from the reactant to coenzyme to electron acceptor, it releases energy. Okay? So the release energy here, class, is one of the most important product of cellular respiration, because cellular respiration is a process that generates energy. So, talking about coenzymes, class, there are two coenzymes um, that are involved in the process of cellular respiration, and these are NADH, and the other one is FADH. So NADH, class, is produced in glycolysis. It is also produced in pyruvate oxidation. And lastly, it is also produced in Krebs cycle. Now, FADH, on the other way around, is produced in Krebs cycle only. Note, class, that NADH and FADH needs to undergo the process of electron transport chain and chemosmosis so that the cell could unlock the potential energy it has. So, the energy could be readily made available. So, it needs to undergo the process of electron transport chain. So, NADH, class, stands for nicotinamide, adenine dinucleotide. Adenine dinucleotide. Okay? So we have nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, and then FADH stands for flavine. So we have flavine adenine dinucleotide. So we have flavine adenine dinucleotide. Now, electron acceptor. So take note, class, that the primary electron acceptor for the process of for the process of cellular respiration is water, H2O. Ayan. So this is the primary electron acceptor. Okay? So that is for the idea of passing that is the idea for the flow of electrons from reactants to coenzymes and then to electron acceptor. Now, class, aside from the information that we had seen from the previous slide, I would like also to discuss the following descriptions, or I would like to add the following descriptions for cellular respiration. So, cellular respiration, class, is a catabolic. So, it is a catabolic, and at the same time, it is an exergonic chemical reaction. So, it is considered as catabolic and exergonic because it degrades the reactant molecule, which is the glucose, into simpler substances, which in process release energy. So when we are talking of catabolism kasi, or catabolic, it means that the cell is degrading something, or it is breaking down something. So we have here the glucose, which will be broken down into simpler substances. In the process of breaking down the reactant molecule or glucose into simpler substances, it will now release energy. That's why it is considered as exergonic. Now, cellular respiration, class, starts in the cytoplasm of the cell. Take note of that. It starts in the cytoplasm of the cell, and the majority of the stages happens in the organelle called mitochondrion for eukaryotic cells. So later on, we will discuss the structure of mitochondrion, as well as the different stages of cellular respiration. We will try to relate it to the structure or parts of the mitochondrion. And last, the prokaryotic cells perform this process in their cell membrane. So as we all know, prokaryotic cell doesn't have mitochondrion. However, they still perform the process of cellular respiration in their cell membrane. Okay? So now, at this point, I'll be showing you the reactants and the products of cellular respiration. So the reactants of cellular respiration are the following. So we have here C6H12O6, this one. So this is our glucose. And then we have 6 molecules of oxygen. gas. So this is our oxygen gas. So these are the reactant molecules. So note class that the reactant molecules will undergo different stages or different processes that are considered oxidative in nature. So after undergoing those processes, the reactant molecules will be converted into the products, which are the following. So we have here 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, 6 molecules of water, and then, as I said a while ago, the most important product of cellular respiration is ATP. Because ATP here, class, represents the energy that is produced in the process. Okay? So, now let's continue with the fate and origin of the molecules involved in the reactants and the product. So as you can see here, class, in our illustration, now let's start with the reactant molecules. So the first molecule is glucose. So we have here C6H12O6, or our glucose. So where do the glucose will come from? Now, the glucose molecule that will be entering the process of cellular respiration comes from the food that we eat. Okay, so it comes from the food that we eat. So what will happen to the glucose as the process continue? So glucose will become oxidized. Okay, so glucose will become oxidized to form carbon dioxide. So as you can see here, class, again, when we say oxidized, the reactant molecule, which is glucose, will be losing electrons. Okay, so in the process of losing electrons, glucose will be converted into carbon dioxide. So the fate of our glucose molecule will be oxidized. To form carbon dioxide. Okay, so that's the origin and fate of our glucose molecule. Now, next, another reactant molecule is oxygen. So, oxygen gas. So, we have here oxygen or oxygen gas. So, where will it came from? So, the origin of the oxygen gas comes from our environment. So, it will come from the air that we breathe in. Okay? So, it will come from the air that we breathe in. So, what will happen to the oxygen? So, the fate of oxygen, it will be reduced. It will be reduced to form water. Okay? So, it will be reduced to form water. So, what does it mean? So, the oxygen gas here, class, will accept electrons, and in the process, oxygen will be converted into water. Okay, so we are done with the reactant molecules. Now, let's proceed with the products. So, the first product here, class, is this. Ayan, so the first product is carbon dioxide. So, we have here CO2. So, we have carbon dioxide. So, the origin, where do carbon dioxide comes from? So, carbon dioxide is the product of glucose oxidation. Ayan, it is the product of glucose oxidation. And what will happen to the carbon dioxide produced in the process of cellular respiration? It will be released to the environment through breathing. Okay? So, it will be released to the environment through breathing. Because take note, as I said a while ago, carbon dioxide is considered as the waste material or the waste product of cellular respiration, which needs to be expelled out of the body. Now, next, another product molecule here is water. So, we have here H2O. So, we have here H2O or water. So, where do water came from? So water came from the reduction, the product of oxygen gas reduction. Okay? So it is the product of oxygen gas reduction. So what will happen to the water produced? So it will stay in the mitochondrion. Will stay into the mitochondrion. And lastly, the last product is energy. So energy in form of ATP. So we have here ATP or energy. So where does it came from? So ATP will came from the oxidation also. Oxidation of glucose. So oxidation of glucose molecule. So what will happen to ATP? So the ATP produced represents the energy. So it will be used by the cell. It will be used by the cell to perform cellular work. Okay, so to perform cellular work. So this table class summarizes to us the origin and fate of the reactant molecules as well as the origin and fate of the product molecules. Okay, so now let's continue. So class, in this slide, we will be discussing the types of cellular respiration. Note class that cellular respiration have two types. It could be aerobic cellular respiration or it could be anaerobic cellular respiration. So when we are talking about of aerobic cellular respiration, it is a type of cellular respiration that requires oxygen. Take note, aerobic respiration, it requires, or the primary requirement for this to happen is oxygen. So in comparison with anaerobic cellular respiration, it produces greater amount of energy. Ayan. So let me highlight that one. So requires oxygen. It requires oxygen and greater amount of ATP, or in short, greater amount of energy. Now, on the other way around, when we are talking about of anaerobic cellular respiration, it is a type of cellular respiration that occurs in an environment with no or low oxygen. Okay? So again, anaerobic cellular respiration happens in environment with no or low oxygen. Now, it produces less amount of ATP as compared with aerobic cellular respiration. Ayan, so let me highlight that. So less amount of ATP. So in comparison with aerobic cellular respiration. So in case of us humans, what do you think is the cellular respiration that we are doing in our cells? Correct. So our cells performs aerobic cellular respiration because basically we are producing the energy in our body in the presence of oxygen. That's why we need to constantly breathe in oxygen. Okay? Now, let's continue. Now, in this slide class, we will now discuss the structure of the mitochondria. So, take note class of the terminology. So, when we are talking about of mitochondria, it's the plural form. Okay? And then the singular form is mitochondrion. So, what are the descriptions of the mitochondrion? So first is that it is a double membrane cell organelle. So later on, we will discuss that. It has double membrane. It has a matrix or a gel-like substance inside. And the inner membrane and mitochondrial matrix of the said organelle contains the enzymes that are essential for the process of cellular respiration to happen. That's why mitochondria, or rather mitochondrion, is associated with cellular respiration. That's why it is considered as the powerhouse of the cell. Okay? So mitochondrion is considered as the powerhouse of the cell, as I mentioned, because of its association to the energy-producing cellular respiration. So, mitochondrion in this illustration is a double membrane organelle. It has its outer membrane. So, let me highlight the outer membrane. So, this is the outer membrane, the color yellow. Ayan. So, this is the outer membrane. And then, the intermembrane space. So, yung intermembrane space natin, this one, let me point it using the laser. Ayan. So, the color red in our illustration, that is the intermembrane space. And then, we have the inner membrane. So, this is our inner membrane. So, let me highlight that using color red. So, we have the inner membrane space. So, this is the inner membrane space. That one. Okay? So, that is the inner membrane space. The inner membrane is folded into structures called crista. Ayan. So, as you can see, there are folds. There are folds inside the inner membrane. So, the foldings are called as the crista. The inner membranes also surrounds the mitochondrial matrix, which is gel-like. Yan, this one. So, the color blue part, the innermost part of the mitochondrion is considered as the matrix. This matrix is more viscous than the cell cytoplasm because it has less water content. So, most of the enzymes needed in the cellular respiration are found embedded in the inner membrane and mitochondrial matrix. So, to be specific, pyruvate oxidation and Krebs cycle happens in the mitochondrial matrix, and electron transport chain and chemoosmosis happens in the inner membrane space. So later on, we will go back with that concept. No? So the part of mitochondria and the stages that is associated with each structure. So let's continue. So at this point, let's discuss now the main stages of aerobic cellular respiration. So I want you to take a look with this diagram. So cellular respiration has 4 major stages, as you can see. So we have here glycolysis. So this is glycolysis. And then we have pyruvate oxidation. We have citric acid cycle, which is also known as Krebs cycle. And lastly, we have here the oxidative level phosphorylation, which includes electron transport chain and chemoosmosis. Now, among these 4 stages, the electron transport chain, this one, the electron transport chain, this one, and the chemoosmosis produces the greatest amount of ATP. So, always remember that. So, the majority of ATP that cellular respiration will produce is basically formed through electron transport chain and chemoosmosis. So, now, aside from that, glycolysis, this one, pyruvate oxidation, and citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle generate a lower amount of ATP. Okay? As compared with electron transport chain and chemoosmosis because they do it by means of substrate level phosphorylation, which refers to the formation of ATP from ADP and a phosphorylated intermediate rather than from ADP and inorganic phosphate. So that is one of their major difference. So take note, class, that glycolysis, pyruvate oxidation, and citric acid cycle will produce ATP less than oxidative level phosphorylation, which are electron transport chain and chemoosmosis. Okay? So also in this illustration, you can see where the processes happens. So for glycolysis, as you can see here, glycolysis happens in the cytosol or the cytoplasm of the cell, and the rest of the remaining stages such as pyruvate oxidation, citric acid cycle, and electron transport chain happens inside mitochondrion. Now, talking about the stages of cellular respiration, I have here a table where it will summarize to us the stages, the place in the cell where it happens, and its products. So starting off with glycolysis, as you can see here class, glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm as I mentioned a while ago. And the products of glycolysis are pyruvate, 2 ATP molecules as a net. However, the total number of ATP molecules produced in glycolysis are 4. And then NADH. Now, the next stage is pyruvate oxidation. It happens in mitochondrial matrix. Okay? And the products of pyruvate oxidation are acetyl coenzyme A, carbon dioxide, NADH, and hydrogen ion. The next stage of cellular respiration is the citric acid cycle or the Krebs cycle, which happens in the mitochondrial matrix. And the products are NADH, hydrogen ion, carbon dioxide, FADH, and 2 molecules of ATP. And last, the final stage of cellular respiration, which will give us most of the energy in form of ATP, is called as electron transport chain through chemoosmosis. It happens in the inner membrane of mitochondrion, and the products are 32 molecules of ATP. So, in the preceding discussions, we already mentioned ATP. Ayan. So, glycolysis will form 2 ATP. Pyruvate oxidation will not produce directly ATP. Krebs cycle will produce 2 ATP molecules. And then, electron transport chain will produce 32 ATP molecules. However, aside from the ATP, there are also some intermediate metabolites that are involved in the different stages. So for glycolysis, the intermediate metabolite is pyruvate. So this is our intermediate metabolite. So what will happen to the pyruvate? Now class, the pyruvate will be entering the next stage, which is the pyruvate oxidation. So when the pyruvate enters the pyruvate oxidation, the pyruvate will be converted into acetyl coenzyme A. So this is the intermediate metabolite of pyruvate oxidation, acetyl coenzyme A. So next, what will happen to acetyl coenzyme A? Acetyl coenzyme A will now enter the Krebs cycle. Okay? It will be now entering the Krebs cycle, in which, in this stage of cellular respiration, the acetyl coenzyme A will be converted into NADH, hydrogen ion, carbon dioxide, and FADH. Now, how about the NADH, sir, that has been produced in glycolysis, pyruvate oxidation, and Krebs cycle? So all of the NADH class, this one, NADH, it will go to the electron transport chain. The NADH produced by pyruvate oxidation will also go to the electron transport chain. The NADH produced by the Krebs cycle will go to the electron transport chain as well as with its FADH. Because the process of electron transport chain will now unlock the energy that is hidden or that can be found in NADH and FADH. So, electron transport chain will convert these molecules into ATP. Okay? Now, let's continue with the totals that are produced, the total energy produced for each stages of aerobic cellular respiration. So the question is, how much energy does cellular respiration yield from a single molecule of glucose? So the answers are 4 molecules of ATP. Ayan, so the total number of ATP molecules produced in glycolysis is 4. For Krebs cycle, it will produce 2 molecules of ATP. For electron transport chain, it will be producing 34 molecules of ATP. So, a total ATP from one molecule of glucose ranges from 38 to 40. So, let me explain it in detail in the next slide. Okay? So, in this slide now, let's count the total. So for glycolysis, the total number of ATP produced is 4 ATP. For pyruvate oxidation, it will produce 0 ATP, no ATP at all. For Krebs cycle, it will be producing 2 ATP molecules directly. Okay, so now let's look for the numbers of NADH and FADH that each stages will produce. So for glycolysis, it will be producing 2 NADH molecules. 2 NADH molecules. For pyruvate oxidation, it will be producing 2 NADH molecules also. And for the Krebs cycle, it will be producing 6 NADH molecule and 2 FADH molecule. Now, all of these NADH and FADH needs to undergo the process of electron transport chain so that it could be converted into ATP. Now, take note class that a single NADH molecule is equivalent to 3 ATP molecules. So this, so for glycolysis, the 2 NADH molecule, we will be multiplying it by 3. So the answer will be the total ATP that will be produced when the NADH produced in glycolysis will undergo electron transport chain. So 2 times 6, so the total is 6 ATP molecules. Ayan, so we have 6 ATP molecules. For pyruvate oxidation, we will also multiply it by 3. So 2 times 3, it will be producing 6 ATP molecules again. So the NADH that will be produced in pyruvate oxidation, when it undergoes the process of electron transport chain, will produce 6 ATP molecules. Now, for Krebs cycle, we will multiply it also with 3. So 6 times 3, the answer is 18 ATP molecules. Okay, so we have here 18 ATP molecules and we still have FADH. Now, take note class that FADH is equivalent, 1 FADH molecule is equivalent to 2 ATP molecules. So we will be multiplying it by 2. So 2 FADH, 2 times 2, the answer is 4 ATP molecules. So now, let's add them all together. So for glycolysis, so 4 ATP molecules plus 6 ATP molecule, the total is 10 ATP molecules. Now for pyruvate oxidation, it only has 6 ATP molecules. For Krebs cycle, we have here 2 ATP molecules plus 18 ATP molecules, that is already 20. Plus 4 ATP molecules from the oxidation of FADH. So the answer is 24 ATP molecules. So if we will add them all together, 10 plus 6, that would be 16, plus 24, that would be a total of 40 ATP molecules. So meaning, the total ATP produced in one glucose molecule is around 40 ATP molecules. But take note class that we are also after for the net ATP produced in one glucose molecule, which is around 36 to 38 ATP molecules. Why thus the net ATP molecule is lower than the total ATP molecules? Because there are some stages in cellular respiration in which the cell needs to invest energy so that the process could happen. Okay, so the net ATP produced in one glucose molecule is around 36 to 38 ATP molecules. So that ends our discussion about the cellular respiration. Now it's your turn to answer the following questions.